If you guys are ever looking for something different to play, then I highly recommend checking out Maneater. This was a game that I was really skeptical about when I first saw it. I thought it would just be a really shallow game where you play as a shark and you go around killing people, and that it would sort of get old after like 30 minutes. But what it actually is a fully open world shark RPG. Now, strangely enough, this game is made by Tripwire Interactive, who's known for Killing Floor and Red Orchestra, so this is a really different type of game for those guys, and I think they did a really good job with it. So you begin as a mother shark, and you eventually go on like a big rampage on a beach, and then you have to deal with these hunter boats, and you're ultimately captured. And what happens is the guy that captures you is sort of like the main villain of the game, and he just hates sharks. So he kills you, he cuts your belly open, and he pulls out this little baby shark. And the baby shark ends up being you, so that's how you really start the game. The goal of the game is to grow big and large and to go back and get revenge on this guy, so it ends up being like this sort of neat revenge story. Now, unlike something like Jaws, this game is much more lighthearted and silly, so this is not a game that takes itself seriously at all. It's sort of got like this Deadliest Catch vibe going on with the cutscenes, and there's a narrator that's sort of silly, you know, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek. I really like that they decided to go with a sort of sillier vibe like that rather than a more serious Jaws type atmosphere. So as I said earlier, this is an RPG, so you have experience, you have levels, you also have different skills that you can get. And one of my favorite aspects of this game, something that you rarely see in an RPG, is that as you gain levels, you become noticeably larger. So you start off as like a little baby shark, and then you become like a teen shark, and then you get bigger and bigger and bigger until you're like this man-eating monster. And that's something you just don't see very often. In most RPGs, when you gain levels, sure, maybe you'll gain access to like better armor and stuff like that, but you don't often see your character himself visibly change. And that's something I just really thought was cool, and it was just a detail that I appreciated. As you do quests and complete certain tasks, you also unlock like these special body parts that give you different abilities. For example, you can unlock different head parts, different tail parts, and these can give you abilities like creating poison clouds, doing damage whenever you evade, and all kinds of different things. The game also has a bunch of different regions, and each of these regions sort of has its own theme and its own wildlife associated with it. So you begin in like this Louisiana bayou place, so it's like a swampland, and you're going around, you're eating catfish and turtles, and you're occasionally doing battle with like alligators and barracudas. And you eventually go out like into Gulf type areas where you have deeper oceans that you can explore, and you end up running into different whales and sharks, and so it really evolves in a neat way, so you aren't always eating the same stuff and fighting the same stuff all the time. And speaking of that wildlife, the part of this game that surprised me the most is just how much time you spend underwater. So this is not a game that's all about going around killing people. You're going to be spending a lot of time under the water, eating stuff, getting into fights, exploring caverns, and just all kinds of stuff. Now, eating people does play a big role in the game, and eventually you have to do that to sort of progress in certain ways. But make no mistake about it, this is a game that puts a really large emphasis on the underwater stuff and on the wildlife. Something else that I really like about this game is the combat system. Now, it's not extremely deep, but it's just complicated enough so that you aren't just going up to something and attacking over and over again. So you have a regular attack, you have a tail whip that you can do to sort of push enemies back and momentarily stun them, and there's also a counter system built in to where when an enemy glows yellow, if you hit them during that time, it will stun them to where you can get in a bunch of free attacks before they sort of recoup and can strike back at you. It's a relatively simple system, but I like that there's at least a little bit of depth there so that, like I said, you aren't just going up to an enemy and then just attacking over and over and over again. It's nice that you actually have to employ some strategy in order to win, at least against higher level enemies. One complaint I do have about the game is that the quests are extremely repetitive and they're really just copied and pasted throughout the game. For example, you'll have quests that have you go out and eat a certain number of fish, or go out and eat a certain number of people, or go out and destroy like a specific boat, and these really don't vary at all from the start of the game all the way up to the end, and I found that to be very disappointing. You know, I wish that they'd varied it up a little bit and just used the regions themselves in more creative ways. Like have really cool quests that are specific to regions and that sort of leverage like the region's themes, or, you know, just something like that, something different that you wouldn't see coming. Overall though, this is a really unique and fun game. I don't think I've played an RPG quite like this, and it's just rewarding, you know, to go around and gobble up these fish and get into fights and grow larger and larger, and, you know, to visibly see yourself growing larger and more powerful, and even to go back into regions where you were getting your ass kicked before and be able to dominate those creatures that were giving you trouble earlier. I think one really good example is that when you start in the bayou, you have these really large and powerful alligators, and if you try and take those guys on as a baby, you're going to be getting into some serious trouble. But you can come back later when you're a much larger adult and just manhandle them with no problem at all. So right now this game is about $40, and it's available on PC as well as consoles. It's not on the Nintendo Switch yet, but it will be coming to the Switch later this year. On PC, unfortunately, it's exclusive to the Epic Store. That's where I played it. So if you're someone who absolutely has to have it on Steam or GOG, you're sort of out of luck for the next year. But if you don't mind it being on the Epic Store, I definitely recommend giving it a shot, because I found it to be a lot of fun, and like I said, just really unique. Definitely one of the most unique RPGs I've played, and even despite the repetitive quest, I had a hell of a lot of fun with it. And it's especially fun when you get later in the game and you're much larger and you can go on these massive killing sprees and attack these beaches and blow up boats and just raise absolute hell out there. So as always, I appreciate everybody for watching. If you have any questions at all about Maneater, just feel free and ask below. And if you've played Maneater, let me know what you think in the comments below. This game has not gotten stellar reviews. It's sort of a mixed bag. So if you've played it, I'd like to know what you think about it and what your pros and cons are. So again, thanks for watching. And this is Chubbs signing out.
The sharks are out here somewhere.